Nowadays, it's hard to find someone who hasn't heard of the Squid Game. In recent weeks, this South Korean drama has been loved by millions of people around the world and has become a major sensation of world cinema. This is due not only to the interesting plot but also to the very spectacular scenes. How was the most dangerous of them filmed? What did the staging of the death scenes look like? And what did the actors risk? Let's find out. This is the Mind Channel, and in this episode, we will tell and show you how the most dangerous scenes from Squid Game were filmed. Be warned, there will be many spoilers. Red light and green light. The first game has become one of the main symbols of the drama. In just a couple of weeks, many TikTok parodies were filmed on the first game. Millions of videos appeared with the sound of a doll singing a song, and the scene itself left no one unimpressed. That's largely because it was filmed almost naturally. Of course, no one was really killed, but the decorations in the scene were really huge. Even the doll we saw in the first episode is just as gigantic in reality. It now stands in Jincheongun County, 3 hours from Seoul. The second reason for the epicness of the scene is the extras. There were actually 456 people in the scene, not counting the masked guards. It's amazing. This, by the way, affected the safety of the filming. The actors risked injury in the crush, in the escape scene to the doors, and risked painfully bumping into each other. Falls were not to be forgotten either. Many cast members fell in the turmoil, including protagonist Song Ji-hyun. And although mattresses were used for this purpose on the filming set, the scene cannot be called safe. But another game, Tug of War, was much more dangerous. The third game, which was to be played by the players, was memorable to many viewers for its sheer scale. Here the viewer sees for the first time a really huge decoration, a giant field with a sensor doll and a playground with a large slide from the second game. That is epic too, but we think the Tug of War platform is even more epic. Teams stand on either side of the platform, tens of feet above the ground, and begin to tug of war. Those who lose, fly down with no chance of escape. Of course, the rope scene was filmed using a lot of computer graphics, but this did not make the filming process completely safe. The actors, just like their characters, were also standing on a platform above the ground, but it was much closer to the ground, just a few meters. The actors, whose characters were destined to die, were literally hanging over a small abyss. This in itself is dangerous, so when filming, all the actors actually risked falling off the platform. And even though there were boxes and strong safety elements waiting for them at the bottom, nobody wanted to fall. Fortunately, there were no injuries on the filming, but the actors gave a lot of energy. The fifth game with the glass bridge is partly reminiscent of the tug of war rule, because in case of defeat the heroes dropped out of the game, also dying from hitting the ground after falling. In the story, the distance from the bridge to the ground was very long, but on the set, of course, it was different. The bridge was the same as what we saw on the screens, but it was about a meter to the ground. Quite a bit, but even that was enough to make the actors feel uncomfortable. Yoon Ho-yeon, who played the role of Kang Si-byok, said that filming that scene was terrifying. By the way, it was Yoon Ho-yeon's debut in a movie. We think the Korean supermodel did a great job. But back to the scene where the actors really jumped on the tempered glass. There was no fragile glass on the set. Instead, the actors landed on a small platform that immediately went out from under them. That is, the actors literally experienced the sensation of falling down. That's why it was an unplayed emotions of fear. As for the scene in which Sang-woo pushes down the glacier, player number 17, it was filmed differently. It was more than 1.5 meters to the ground, and the actor had to fly down, with a safety rope of course. And even though the rope was safe and there were boxes at the bottom, something could have gone wrong and the actor would have been injured. But luckily, everything turned out all right. The Squid Game. The sixth and final game was not the easiest to film. Squid Game, in which it was decided who would leave the mysterious island with billions of won. It's not to say that the fight scene between Song Ji-hyun and Sang-woo was very dangerous, but it can't be called safe either. The actors played the scene without understudies. At least the close-up scenes were just that. There were a few moments in those scenes where something could go wrong. Namely, the scene of Ji-hyun throwing sand in his eyes. And the scene where Sang-woo tries to finish off Ji-hyun by hovering over him with a knife. Of course, they used props on the set, but the actors still took a risk with this scene. Luckily, only their characters were injured, and the scene itself came out special and epic. The computer graphics and cinematic rain made it very dramatic. This was the sixth and final scene in the drama. By the way, did you know that director Hwang Dong-hyuk originally planned to call the project Round 6? Good thing he changed his mind, because that title would have been boring. But there's no need to get bored when watching the drama. The creators have put a lot of details in it, many of which you probably missed when you first watched it. Let's fix that. It's time to find out the most interesting and hidden details from the Squid Game. And also get to know a couple of theories about the drama. Only two players, Jihan and Sangwoo, reached a final, and only Jihan was the only one to win the game. When watching the drama, it was hard to guess how a particular character would die, but there were actually clues. For example, in the finale, Sangwoo, lying on the floor, puts his hands on himself. In the second episode, we see that he wanted to commit suicide by lying in a bathtub and inhaling acrid smoke. The main positive character of the drama, Pakistani Abdul Ali, dies because Sangwoo steals his marbles in the fourth game. Earlier, the character admits to stealing a large sum of money from his boss. Number 67 Kong Saibayok is also a victim of Sangwoo. He stabbed her to death. She also threatened her enemy in the outside world with the same thing when she held a knife to his throat. Gangster Jang Doksu, number 101, dies in the fifth challenge after falling to the ground from a bridge. If you remember, it was by jumping off the bridge that he escaped from the gangsters chasing him for his debts in the outside world. Speaking of Doksu, actor Hyo Sung-tae does a great job as the moral bandit. So truthful, it seems like Hyo Sung-tae is just as mean and callous in person. In fact, he is the exact opposite of his character. His Instagram is full of pictures of kitties. The actor himself said in an interview that there is no need to be afraid of him, he causes no harm. He said this in Russian. He knows Russian and speaks it very well. Now back to the details. Jihan is also worth mentioning. Although he didn't die, the creators showed an interesting moment. In the second episode, when Jihan begs Saibayok to release him, he swears to his mother that he won't demand the money she stole from him. And once Saibayok frees Jihan, he starts demanding what she stole. Coincidence or not, in the last episode we learn that Jihan's mother has died. In all of this is one of the main philosophical undertones of the drama. We get everything we deserve. The clues were not only in front of the audience, but also in front of the players. When players first found themselves in the main room, it was all crammed with beds. In all this hustle and bustle, players would hardly pay attention to the walls, but they should have done just that. After all, there were symbolic clues painted on the walls in the form of pictures of games. All the games, from Tug of War and Sugarcomb to Glass Bridge, Pebble's game, were depicted from the beginning. If players had noticed the clues, it would have been much easier for them to play. But the images didn't begin to appear until the end. It wasn't until just before the last challenge that we see all of these drawings. While it was clear to the finalists that they would have to play Squid at the end, one of the highlights of the drama was the arrival of the VIPs. The VIPs in animal costumes and masks watched the final challenges, reveling in their power and talking amongst themselves. One of them, in one episode, said that the season in Korea was the best. Many of you may not have paid attention to this phrase or given it much thought, but it makes it clear that the game in South Korea is not the only one. Apparently, similar games are played all over the world. That's why the VIPs arrived so late, only for the finals. Apparently before that they were at another game in another country. For other games, by the way, indicates another phrase from the VIPs, who said that watching the games live is more interesting than on TV. It is possible that in the future we will be shown games outside of Korea. It's also possible that Netflix will please us with spin-offs or prequels on this story. Player 1. Although only Jihan won the game, Elnam, Player 1, who turned out to be the main organizer and creator of the game, also survived. The fact that he was in charge was evidenced by many details. His number, his excellent knowledge of the games, his sincere panic that stopped the carnage, and more. But more interesting is the fact that Elnam may have been Jihan's father. This is also indicated by several details that are not easy to spot on first viewing. For example, in one episode Jihan says that he is lactose intolerant, to which Elnam replies, "Just like my son." In another episode, in scene 4 of Pebbles, Elnam walks around the lined-up neighborhood, marveling that the scenery reminds him of the neighborhood where he lived. Jihan responds that he was born in the same place. In addition, both characters had a very warm relationship for such a violent game. They constantly supported each other. Jihan helped the sick Elnam before the fourth test, and the latter gave him his number 1 jacket. Perhaps this was his way of trying to protect Jihan, for he knew that the guards would not kill a man in uniform with that number. It's possible that the second season will tell their story in detail. There's a reason why Jihan's mother didn't say a word about his father during the entire first season. Write in the comments, are you looking forward to season 2? If so, what do you think season 2 will show? Also, if you've been curious, like and subscribe.